So what was it that brought you to DDF?
I think first and foremost, always an interest in the problem. So I think many or most people have a personal connection to a dementia. And for the Dementia Discovery Fund, that means for us, any age-related neurodegenerative disease with cognitive symptom domains. So that includes Alzheimer's and PSP. That includes Lewy body dementia and Parkinson's disease. That includes frontotemporal dementia and ALS. It includes Huntington's disease dementia. So it is broader than Alzheimer's disease, although we do have a focus on Alzheimer's disease. So it started with an interest in that problem and then a recognition that DDF was the first largest and leading fund family focused on dementia and largest by capital committed. And as I've been interested in my entire career in impact and translation and making a difference, I didn't think there was another opportunity like it, just given the scale and scope and potential of DDF. And then finally, I was really excited to join SV as a management company. So SV is a management company with a 30-year history to celebrate its 30th anniversary last summer. It's 5 fund families and a really excellent group of people to work with and learn from and tackle this problem. So many reasons to join DDF.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to get a sense for how DDF has evolved in your time there. So can you sort of give us, I don't know, paint a picture of what you walked into and maybe juxtapose that with the DDF of today? Not that I necessarily want to set you up to give yourself all sorts of credit for growth. I'm just curious about where sort of where we've been and where we are now. Kind of story.
Well, I think that the DDF story is a great one because it's also a story that demonstrates a lot of progress and optimism. And so I'll start well before I joined and then contrast that with today. So DDF was originally conceived and then created all the way back in 2015. And it came out of a G8 meeting focused on the dementia health crisis. And this really is a global health crisis. It's been recognized as such by the WHO and by the CDC because of the demographic changes, the otherwise healthy aging population, and the fact that we don't have disease-modifying drugs. So you have this rapidly increasing number of people who suffer from dementias, and it's obviously a human tragedy, but also a huge burden on the healthcare system. And so there was actually a Harvard Business Review case study written on the formation of DDF, but fundamentally, this need was recognized. There was a belief that this was an area that was underinvested historically by not just venture capitalists, but also by pharmaceutical companies, and that all the capital that was in the system was being focused on a few narrow approaches to try to solve the Alzheimer's disease and other dementia problems. And so DDF was created as a fund, and a first amount of capital was committed by strategic limited partners before a manager was even selected to manage the fund. And then there was a solicitation process, and SV was chosen. So really, DDF started as an idea, a concept, a tool to solve a problem. SV then tripled the size of the fund. There was a final close in 2018, and then had to continue to build a bespoke investment team, continue to develop and refine the investment strategy, build a portfolio of companies that were exciting, and then begin to return capital to investors. And so that puts us where we are today, where we're investing out of our second fund. We've had successful exits. We have a team of incredible world-class investors, scientist investors, venture partners who bring experience from former heads of R&D or neuroscience R&D at major pharma companies to entrepreneurs and other experts. And we think we have the momentum and the foundation to continue to move forward and invest in companies that are developing transformational medicines for dementias and Alzheimer's disease and the other medical needs that I already referenced, while returning capital to our investors to continue to redeploy.
Yeah. Uh, give me some color on how the refinement exercise has shaped the investment strategy at DDF. Like, I could ask specifics, but I'll start with the high level question. What are you looking for?
Well, our strategy is science first. So where we always start is looking for therapeutic hypotheses that we believe will be transformational if we can execute. So we need to believe in the hypothesis behind the target, the enabling data set, the ability to replicate the work, the ability to drug the target. And then, again, layering on the other criteria that all venture capitalists should be looking for, right? Which are more related to execution. Like, can you actually deliver the solution based on that science? But fundamentally, we're science first. We think that if we can develop a drug, it will have an investment return. I think in addition to the science, we're building on the expertise of a specialty fund. So the advantage of being focused is that we can build relationships, internal expertise, external expertise, knowledge bases that are specifically relevant so that we can not only find the best opportunities, but also actively manage them to give them the highest likelihood of success. So starting with the science, deploying this specific expertise that we can develop as a specialty fund. I think a third pillar of our strategy is precision medicine, and that's something that has been important across all of the SV managed life science funds, not just the dementia fund. So we need to be able to find the right patients and demonstrate the effects of drugs more quickly than waiting for symptomatic endpoints. And that's something that I think the field learned from other areas, but is even more important in CNS disorders, where historically many failures were based on the fact that the wrong patients were being treated, and you couldn't get an early read on efficacy. So I think precision medicine is certainly specifically important for investing in dementia. And then the last two aspects, I think, of our strategy that are important are company creation and early investment. That's important as an impact investor because it's the most direct evidence of additionality. If not for the SV team, the DDF team, these companies would not exist. These approaches would not exist. It also ensures that we have really quality deal flow and opportunities to deploy capital because we're creating them ourselves, and we have the proprietary economics and control that comes along with creating those companies ourselves. And then finally, diversification. So that word, I think, might be surprising if we're talking about a specialty fund, but we think it's even more important when you're talking about a specialty fund. So we intentionally think about how we can diversify across the portfolio, invest in multiple mechanisms, invest in multiple dementias, invest in multiple modalities, but also how we can have each company be internally diversified so that those companies don't sink or swim on a single event, or more importantly, on a single event that might be out of their control in the macroeconomic or macro scientific environment.
Yeah. I want to get back to the scientific foundation and get a sense for how DDF assesses the science behind the companies that it gets behind. I mean, as I mentioned, you've got some pretty good experience academically and in research there. But what does the actual mechanism look like when it comes time to assess a potential company's scientific foundation?
I think we have many tools in our toolbox to do that. So certainly the first is the full-time team. And the full-time investment team, as I mentioned, we're made up of scientist investors. So each of the partners focused on DDF and each of the non-partner investment team members have a PhD. So we can make a first triage of opportunities and select those that we think are worth investing more human resources to continue to evaluate. And beyond that, we have many other tools. So I mentioned the venture partners and advisors. So internal to DDF, we've signed a group of venture partners and advisors, scientific advisors, who we think represent not only world-class expertise, but a breadth of expertise. So I mentioned some of the criteria, some of the expertise, but for example, Tetsu Maruyama, who's a venture partner and for DDF, was the former executive director of the ADDI, also former head of drug discovery at Takeda. We have Jim Summers, who is the former vice president and head of global neuroscience research at AbbVie. Right? We have Lynn Hughes, who is former VP and head of CNS growth strategy at IQVIA. Or Tim Harris, who is the former EVP and R&D at Biopharma or SVP of precision medicine at Biogen. And these are just some of the venture partners that we call on and who play a role in all of our deal teams and all of our company creation efforts. And then outside of or in the next sort of concentric circle of expertise that we can draw upon and the next stage in our process, we have the expertise we can draw upon from our various partners. And so those partners include our limited partners, and we have a standing scientific advisory board that includes representatives from many of our strategic limited partners, but also our non-limited partners, so our foundation partners. So we work very closely with many of the foundations in the space, whether they be research foundations or patient advocacy foundations, like the Alzheimer's Drug Discovery Foundation, ADDF, or Parkinson's UK, or Michael J. Fox, for Alzheimer's Research UK, Target ALS, just to name a few.
Yeah. Company creation comes with I'm assuming it comes with a set of risks and challenges that perhaps investing in a clinical stage company that has some data to show for itself doesn't, right? What do you consider the most challenging and or risky aspect of company creation? Like, I don't want to answer for you, but the first thing that pops into my head is staffing, talent, right? Like, you've got a translatable idea, but maybe you don't have the infrastructure from a human resources perspective right off the bat to make that move. So that would be one. But you tell me, like, what is the riskiest or most challenging aspect of that model?
Well, the unsatisfying answer is it depends. But I think that in reality, there's multiple failure modes and you can't get any of them wrong. So
no pressure.
I think some to be controversial, I think certainly you'll hear venture capitalists at panels saying management is the most important and the most critical, because a good management team can pivot away from a failing technology or hypothesis to a new opportunity, right? And potentially be successful. And I think there's validity to that. I also think what you said is you can't succeed without good talent, whether that be academic founders, entrepreneurs, or people you bring to the table. And part of our company creation model, our venture partners, every company that we've created or built as part of DDF has had a venture partner, a DDF venture partner affiliated with that company creation or build effort, either as a founder or as an initial member of the management team. So we do bring expertise to bear when we're doing a company build. So I do agree with that. But you do need to have, again, especially for a science first fund, you do need to have a solid scientific hypothesis to build upon. And that could turn out, again, to fail later, and you might be able to pivot, but we're not going to launch a company, unless we can find both. We do have our own processes for building companies. We do, for example, have meetings that SV calls prepared minds meetings, which are analogous to scientific advisory board meetings before you've even started the company, where we bring in potential founders, potential co-founders, advisors, and brainstorm around key opportunities and issues in advance, often, of creating a company. So sometimes the people can come first, but I think all of these challenges are important, and I wouldn't say one is harder than the others.
Yeah. You mentioned precision medicine a little bit earlier, and that being a focus of SV. Do you hold any other sort of modality biases or favorites in terms of modalities? This is a space where we've seen. We'll get into this here in a minute. We've seen a little bit of tumult, for lack of a better word, in terms of approvals, even.
Yeah,
So yeah, given the way that that's shaping up, has DDF sort of ascribed to any specific modalities or mechanisms?
we want diversification. We also want to choose the right tool to solve the right problem. So we're very open-minded and have invested in many different modalities. So within our portfolio, we have small molecules, we have antibodies, we have antisense oligonucleotides, we have a gene therapy company. We don't yet have a cell therapy company within the DDF portfolio. There certainly have been cell therapy companies within the broader SV Biotech portfolio. At the same time, I think patients have preferences, right? And certain indications and certain unmet medical needs have best fits. So in many or most cases, patients would prefer to take a tablet than an injection, right? And the industry would prefer a scalable small molecule manufacturing to a cell therapy manufacturing. So I do think that there's certain types of modalities that are an easier sell, but at the same time, where we're starting with is the unmet need, the right solution, and then the right tool to enable that solution.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you've got a promising prospect with good science and maybe a good scientific founder who's willing to move the needle, and you decide to invest. You decide to go into creation mode. What does that look like in practice? Like, are there guardrails around what's provided and when and how? Give us a sense for how the actual investment vehicle works.
So you mean what's provided in terms of capital or resources? Maybe you could refine the question.
Well, I was thinking capital when I asked the question, but if there's more to the story, I mean, fill in the blank.
Yeah. So when we think about company creation, there's multiple stages, right? So there is a discovery stage where we try to, again, identify that problem and solution mix. There's the investment stage, right, where we build the thesis and we bring in the management team and we put in the capital. And then there's that building and growth stage where we're actively managing these investments, we're syndicating them, bringing in additional capital, helping the company hit important value inflection points, and then eventually the exit. And so certainly I think what we're looking for early on is not necessarily to fit a company into some set of cookie cutter criteria, but what we're looking for is an opportunity to create value quickly. As you mentioned, certainly company creation is riskier than investing in later stage opportunities. Certainly takes a lot more time and effort than evaluating an existing company for a potential investment. And so we need to ensure that additional risk and effort is balanced by the reward on both the impact side as well as the investment side. So we need that opportunity to say, we can build value. Here are some explicit milestones, some whether they be technology development, R&D, drug R&D milestones, but here's some specific milestones that we can hit with our initial investment and efforts that are going to validate the investment thesis, attract that additional capital, and attract that additional capital at a valuation that reflects the contributions of that founding team and the founding capital.
Mm-hmm. Do you typically commonly find the company in hunt mode, or are you sifting through RFPs on a daily basis and picking and choosing? Like, what's sort of the acquisition approach?
I think we have multiple sources of new deals. And I think when I'm talking to entrepreneurs or executives at early stage companies, certainly we get unsolicited inbound opportunities. We don't put out calls for proposal, right? But we do get unsolicited opportunities. At the other end of the spectrum, you use the word hunt. I mean, there's company creation efforts that we undertake because we've recognized an opportunity or need, right? And I mentioned those prepared minds as a mechanism, but we'll do landscaping analyses where we say, here's an area of emerging science that we see overlapping with commercial white space, an unmet medical need, and let's expend our energies to try to see if there's something here and a solution to create. So we have those two ends of the spectrum, and then everything in between, right? From the sort of referred opportunities, right, that come from trusted partners, to companies that are in the process of being built, right, already by an entrepreneur that we're introduced to, or maybe we've already known, where we can add additional value. And so we're willing to lean in and share risk and invest early or invest alone, and put in that sweat equity ourselves as well, for those opportunities that we think are really exciting. And again, that could be transformational. And I don't use that word lightly.